This summer, Instacart presents famous summer flavors coming to your front door. Or pool. Or hotel.
Your grocery delivery has arrived, sir.
That was faster than room service.
No violins in the lobby.
Oh, seriously? Anyway, sit back, relax, and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Starring your favorite snacks, drinks, and more. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Rated H for hungry audiences. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Morning, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Welcome all to My Life, My Music with the Governor, Alan Hudson, as we take a trip down memory lane through chapter and verse. And in this edition, Al, it's going to be New Year, Fresh Hope, and Shine on Huddy.
Yeah, there's something about New Year in my life, mate. It's even to the extent of away from football. I was looking forward in 1997 to enjoy Christmas and New Year, and I missed it for being hit by a car. So it's always a bit anxious around that time of the year, my friend.
Absolutely, and we're going to start there because I did reference Shine on Huddy, and there's a great story about Betty Shine, and it does lead us into a classic with TD holding your hand while you're in a coma. There's also a lovely little humorous story about Doddy, not Ken but Alan. So let's start with Betty Shine, and how did she connect with you, or more importantly, how did you connect with Betty Shine whilst you were in a coma?
Well, I was on. I can't remember what the date of. I remember the last thing I can remember. 15th of December '97. Walking home, and the rest is history. And then all of a sudden I was sitting up when I'd come down out of the coma and coming off the. I think I'd come off the morphine by then. I received my first phone call from Betty, and I'm not too clear about if my family had told me all about it by that time, but she introduced herself on the phone and told me all about it. She told me how she was working for the Daily Mail at the time. She was doing I don't know if it was a weekly or a daily column. I would imagine a weekly column in there, because she used to work for the Scotland Yard and stuff like that, solving cases that they couldn't solve. And she said she was having a morning coffee over a Daily Mail, and she read just a tiny snippet at the bottom saying that I'd been hit by a car, and told her that I was quite a famous footballer who played for whoever, and she knew nothing about me. So and at that moment, as she was reading it, I cried out to her for help. Help me, and then she contacted my family and told them it wasn't a hoax, and would they mind if she spoke to me. And the next thing from there was she said she can find out a little bit more. How she got my number was, Paul, was she used to do healing with Kevin Keegan's wife, and she said I'll ask. I think her name is Jean, is it? She said I'll ask his wife if she'll ask Kevin, if we were friends, and about contacting me. And he helped her. So that's how it all came about.
It's a quite unbelievable story because she was telling your wife at the time information about you that only the family could have known because it was personal information. And also with your sister at the time living in a house, she your dad had not long passed, hadn't he? And she was shouting out for your dad for help, and a crucifix appeared, and it's still embedded in that wall to this day, isn't it?
Well, it's still there. My sister's since moved, but it kept
Yeah.
coming up. But what happened was my sister was in her flat that night, and she was talking to another family member, and she was very, very upset. And the young girl sitting on the settee said, "I don't want to frighten the life out of you, but turn around." And she looked on the wall, and there was a crucifix come up on the wall, and. When I first found out, I didn't doubt it. I believed it, obviously, because I actually do believe in stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but Julie's boyfriend came in from work that night and ran out of the house. He was petrified.
Mm.
So there was, Julie said that every time that she got a call or someone told her that I was very, very seriously ill, that it was touch and go, that it would come up. It would die, it would kind of die down when I was safe and come up when I was in danger. So it was quite extraordinary, really.
It's an incredible story, and your mum and the family were there every day, and your mum would bring food for the nurses and so on. And you had a few visitors, Tony Davis being one of the visitors, and it does lead us nicely into the first song. Um, Even the nights were better when you two were sharing better moments in New York, and he was singing to you, wasn't he, while you was in the coma, apparently.
Well, it's that we found air supply.
Yeah.
I found air, but Tony used to come and stay with me in Seattle, and he'd come over for 2 weeks and stay for about 3 months. And we loved the life out there, and air supply were a big part of it. And when I come out of the coma and people were telling me stories, that was one of the stories. And I said to him, that wasn't a very appropriate song, even the nights are better. I said, because no one knew at that time if I was coming out of the
Yeah.
coma or not, or, if they were going to turn off the life machine or whatever. So only little TD could do that to me. But that's the way it is. It's a great song. He knew it was one of my favourite songs, and we used to sing it all the time. So, it must have had some kind of effect on me.
Absolutely, and they produced or recorded 4 studio albums whilst you were in America. Coincidentally, the first one was Life Support in '79. Lost in Love, yeah, I know. Lost in Love 1980. The one that you love in 1981, and Now and Forever in 1982. And Graham Russell and Richard Hitchcock. Absolute. I mean, you've introduced me to Air Supply. I remember I'm All Out of Love when I was a kid, and I do remember a couple of hits that they had. But the power of love for to own that record.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the amount of people come in my house. I mean, I had a beautiful bar in Seattle, and we'd always have music on, and they walked straight into the bar, and we did a lot of socializing there, and and the amount of people that said to me, "She's got a beautiful voice,"
Yeah,
and it just made me smile. But like you, I heard "All Out of Love," before was one of the first songs I heard of theirs, but I never really given much. I never give it much thought after
yeah,
that. I never really followed them. I never. It wasn't until I got to America, because I suppose it was because they wasn't very big in England. I don't think they toured England. If they did, they didn't go down too well, or
mm,
whatever. You know what the music industry was like at that time, but it wasn't until I reached America. I suppose I lived a completely different life in America than I did in England. That I kind of built my own nightclub at home, um, and I really, I listened to their music all the time, and the people. I mean, I had people come in my house that, would just, thank me months later for introducing me to that kind of music, and they would go out and buy their albums and cassettes at that time. They made such a, they kind of made life so much brighter for me while I was out there.
And the story, before we move on to, we're going to go back to the beginning in 69, 70 shortly, Al. But Doddy, when Doddy come and spoke to you, and there's a great little story about Alan, not Ken.
Well, Alan, for those listeners or whoever out there, I always try and get my point across about Alan Doddy's. He was a young kid when I got there, I'd never heard of, and he had only played a few matches in the first team when I got there, and I was a record signing, and he took my eye straight away. He was just an incredible player, but it wasn't just on the field; it was off the field. He was so unassuming. He didn't want to be a footballer. He wanted to retire from the game when he was 20. Because he preferred to be a roofer. I still see him up in Stoke now. I love him to death. He's just a great kid who's got had this amazing ability to play centre half. He wasn't big and strong. He was pretty much my stamp, but could run. He was doing marathons when he was 40 odd. He could run all day. He was naturally fit, naturally gifted, brilliant in the air, brilliant, on the floor. It made everything look simple, made the game look so ridiculously simple, and it was one of those things again in English football that if you played for a backstreet club, and it don't matter how good you was, you wouldn't get selected for the country. In those days, the national team was, all about Manchester United and Liverpool and that kind of thing at that time. And unless you played for them, and then when Revie took over, obviously Leeds, you had no chance of getting in the team. And that's why, people like Alan, there was, we had another player at Stoke called Alan Bloor, another incredible centre back, but they just never got any recognition, and I can see why my boss drank so much.
but wasn't Alan talking to you and he wouldn't shut up? And when asked, he said, "Well, it's the only time I've ever got a word in with you, Al, while you were in a coma."
Well, it was my son. My son come in. My son told me about it, Alan, and he come in. He said he said he was in there for about an hour, holding my hands and talking to me. And he come in a couple of times and said to him, "Al," he said, "You all right?" And he went, "Yeah." He said, "I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished. I'm still talking to him," and as if we was having a conversation. And it wasn't till quite a few years later, and I said, I told him the situation and said, my Alan told me, he even named his son after me. He was Alge, he called his son Alge, and I said, "What was all that about?" And he just said, he said, "In all the time I've ever knew you before the car hit you," he said, "I never get a word edgeways. So it's the only chance I really could speak to you without you stopping me." So he sat there for an hour just rabbiting away, telling me, I suppose, telling me about games, telling me about the good times, and how, I always tried to help him and encourage him, and he didn't need no encouraging how to play the game, but he certainly, I think I told you before, he was the only person when I knocked about with the manager that I ever spoke about, because he said he wanted to pack the game in. I said to my boss, you better address this, you better talk to him. You can't lose this player, and if he walks away from the game, it'd be devastating,
Absolutely. And while we're touching upon that, Alan, I was interacting with him earlier, and he says you've got to ask him about the Peter McNee story when he taps you on the shoulder.
Go on, Peter, who's Peter McNee?
Ain't he the one in the Avengers? And
Oh, Patrick McNee.
Patrick McNee, and you were at a function. And he said he tapped you on the shoulder. Do you recognise me?
No, I did a show with Patrick McNee when
Yeah.
a radio show, and he was quite a strange one actually. He was a gentle, he was actually seemed the same off there than he did on it.
Yeah.
He was very strange. He was
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.
He wasn't very outgoing or whatever, but it was just at the time when I brought the Working Man's Ballet out, and I went on the show in the morning as the Ed Sheeran show, I think it was.
Okay.
And it was the morning that Chelsea played Middlesbrough in the FA Cup final,
Right.
and I think he scored the lads, the Italians.
Yeah, Di Matteo.
Yeah, he scored the quickest goal in the cup
Yeah,
final goal
yeah.
of and that was the day. And we was on the show, and it was a great show. The two girls were on there that have gone on to do pretty well themselves, both individually. Two young girls, Mel and someone, is it? I don't know.
Mel and Kim.
But yeah, is it? Yeah, Mel and Kim.
They were
We
big
went
at the time, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the first time I'd ever known about it. Anyway, they were on the show, and there was another chap who was a terrific singer. It was a real good show on a Saturday morning. David Hemmings was on there.
Okay.
I was, and I went round with, we all went round to the pub afterwards before we went to Wembley, and, David told me not to mention anything about when we first met because he was with, we met at Lord Litchfield's home in, obviously Litchfield, and yeah, we met there. But I went up there with Jeff Hurst. He had a fit in for a suit, and he was there. The tailor was there, and David was sitting playing backgammon with Gal Honeycutt, who at that time was a bit of a stunner herself. So he kind of he was with a young lady, and he gave me the eyes not to mention anything. So it was quite an eventful morning, So that was the kind of stuff that went on, and you got to remember, at that time, I wasn't even planned at that time.
Yeah.
I was, that wasn't as I say, the Working Man Ballet had just come out, so that'd have been 96, 97. I'd have been 46 years of age, but you're still rubbing shoulders with them kind of people,
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said, I didn't recognise you without your hat and doing somersaults.
Well, when you think he had some of the most beautiful girls on his show as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
It was a good show. I mean, it wasn't. I couldn't understand the show. I didn't, didn't know what it was all about. But the girls were, when you think he started with Honor Blackman, and went on from there.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go back to 69, 1970. And the FA Cup, you made your FA Cup debut, didn't you, in 1970 against Birmingham
Against
City.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. And and the record that we're going to be looking at, it was a good year by Frank Sinatra. And it was a good year for you, wasn't it, personally?
Well, it turned out a good year, and, then it went all pear-shaped. But, yeah, I started 1969-70 season. I broke into the team. I played my real debut that year against Tottenham. Then we went on, and it wasn't. I played against Glenn Hoddle in his first game, and you knew from straight away this fella was going to go straight to the top. But it took me a few games to get going, to get up to the pace of the game. I was playing with people that were at that time and still are in my eyes the best players Chelsea have had in Peter Osgood, Charlie Cook, and Eddie McCready. The goalkeeper Peter Bonetti, me, Peter Bonetti, and Peter Osgood were the three chosen to go to Wembley that year and to Mexico. So it was quite it was a slow beginning, but I think exactly what you said, Paul. It kind of came alive. The season came alive when we played Birmingham at home. It doesn't seem a very attractive fixture. It wasn't a Chelsea Manchester United or Chelsea Liverpool. It was it was one of those games, and it was we was kind of struggling a little bit to break them down. I made the first goal for Aussie, so that kind of my first FA Cup tie, and made the first goal. So it's that kind of. I weren't really sure at that time what was going to happen in my life, and I wasn't, as I say, I wasn't tearing up any trees. I wasn't not like George Best when he first came over from Ireland. He straight away was. They say he was, you could see he was going to be something a bit special, but it took me a little bit of while to get going.
And love was growing at Chelsea, wasn't it? Which leads us into not a song that you've picked off your notes that you sent me, Al, but it was the first number one of the 70s. Although it wasn't, but it was, because Two Little Boys was hanging around, which hung over from 1969. So it was officially the first number one of 1970. Love Grows by Edison Lighthouse. And there's a Chelsea, or rather a Fulham connection, because he was born in Fulham, Anthony Gordon Instone, who changed his name to Tony Macaulay. 9 times he won the Ivor Novello for songwriting, and he wrote that song with a fella named Barry Mason. And Barry Mason actually went on and wrote Delilah, which brings us over to Stoke City, music by Les Reed. But when you look at these people, musicians, we've always said this on My Life, My Music, because that's what it's about, football and music. They're absolute genius, aren't they?
Well, it's I don't, we were too young in them days to realise, that's what I became so interested in music a little bit.
Yeah.
I love music from word go, from a much young age than that. But I'd started to study it more, and when I start to get to meeting people like Elton, and then you look into their background, and you wonder how they do it, and who's behind it, and that was a great song for the times as well. That Love Grows.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you lived in the King's Road around that time, and with what was going on in the King's Road, with everything, the flower power, and the girls and everything else, the mini skirts and everything else that was going on. It was just the fashion and everything. It was just that song kind of captured the imagination as well. It was like. Well, it was a swinging 60s going into the 70s, wasn't it? It was there was some fantastic music in them times.
But I think if you look at and listen to Love Grows today, it's still a fantastic song, and it really has stood time, hasn't it? Very, very well. I mean, that start doom 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 doom. It just tells you everything from the intro that song is going to be iconic. 1972, another game you played in the January. Spurs in the League Cup, the semi-final, when you scored a goal. A lot of people thought it was from a corner, but you're right, it wasn't. I was listening to that wonderful podcast that you done with Steve Perryman, and you said it was a free kick, and it just found its way into the back of the net. And there was a song that was knocking around the charts, Crazy Horses, and you was like a crazy horse, Huddy, when you scored that goal, wasn't you?
Well, it was another dream, really,
Yeah,
because things had gone bad for me in '70. From a dream to a nightmare,
yeah,
missing the cup final, missing the World Cup, then coming back and winning the Cup Winners' Cup '71 kind of brought it all back, but it didn't. I was still struggling like hell with the injury, and White Hart Lane became my favourite ground. It was a ground that I'd always been taken to by my father in the early '60s. And it just, I think I was born really to be a Spurs player. I should have been a Spurs player really, because White Hart Lane was my ground. I excelled at that ground, and I always did. But years after, even when I went to Stoke, it was just a ground I loved. And that particular night, we should have been home and hosed, because we won the home leg 3-2. We went into the second leg. We were drawing, and we were about quarter of an hour from the end, maybe. And I think Martin Chivers took a long throw, and it kind of skidded off. It was a really heavy pitch, and it hit me on the inside of the arm. And it wasn't a penalty, but given. And from 1 minute after if the the earth could have opened, I'd have gone away, because it was kind of a dream, a Wembley dream gone. But we were playing superbly, and then right on the final whistle, it was again another tussle between Osgood and Mike England. They were always at it when they played each other, and thankfully so. Mike England jumped all over Ozzy near the corner flag, and John Hollins used to try and grab hold of the ball and take all the corners and free kicks, but I kind of pushed him out of the way and kind of redeemed myself. So it was one hell of a fluke, but I see plenty of them yesterday with the FA Cup. The luck of the cup is, if you don't get no luck in the cup, then you ain't going to win it. And that was, but we deserve that bit of luck, because I think I can remember telling you I had lunch with Terry Venables the next day, and he told me, he said that was, I've got to say, I've played in some fantastic Chelsea, performances, but that was the best I've ever seen. So for him to say that, it was quite something.
And then of course you got transferred to Stoke City, January 1974. You seem to get transferred throughout your career during January or late December, didn't you, Al?
Yeah, there's only two. I think we spoke about. There's only two trains of thought here. There's something to do with. It had nothing to do with Santa Claus, I know, but I think that the manager might have thought, he's going to be no good in the new year for a month or so by the time he's had his Christmas parties. So we'll get rid of him. There was something about December and January with me. As I say, I don't know many people have missed Christmas and New Year, but I did years later. I'm 70 now, but I've only had 69 Christmases and New Year. I kind of started. I kind of started so many new careers in January, which kind of worked out well for me, really, because I'm a great New Year's Day man. I believe next year is going to be better. I sometimes always do. I don't say sometimes. For some reason I always do. I always try and be positive on New Year's Day and enjoy. That's my favourite day of the year, and this time it worked. In 73, 74, it worked.
And on your notes on Living Chelsea, it seemed that Frank was the best male singer, then Babs, that's Barbara Streisand's, were undoubtedly the best female, edging Ella Fitzgerald. And I left Chelsea, leaving Maureen behind with The Way We Were seeming the song that summed it all up, The Way We Were. And that pretty much sums up the whole of the podcast that we do, doesn't it? The way we were, looking back at that way.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I think I better rephrase that. I didn't leave Maureen behind. She refused to come with me.
Okay.
It was, it was, yeah, it was one of those times. It wasn't the one and only time that happened, but at that time, you know, it was. I don't know. It's something. Again, I mentioned the accident. Again, it seems to be that. I seemed to be at my best when I was on my own, and I was left to go to Stoke all on my own. All right, I had my family. My family were incredible on that next journey to Stoke, because you know they never missed a game home and away. You know, they'd always get 10, 12, 14 tickets. You know, because they fell in love with the Potteries as I did. And they fell in love with the manager as I did it. And it was a great journey. It was an incredible journey. It was the most life-changing thing that ever happened.
To listen to the rest of this podcast, please go to www.patreon.com/SRBmedia, or just follow the links in the description. Thank you.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.